would like to officially welcome you all to today's session, where the focus will be on procurement and finance as a single unified process. Some of you might have joined earlier sessions that we've done throughout the year on the topics of digital transformation, overall modernization of the IT landscape, and innovation in finance. So I'm very happy to welcome you to one of our last webinars of the year. My name is Martin. I'm part of Rojo Integrations, and over the next 30 minutes, we're going to discuss and look at how procurement and finance can operate as a single process and what this means for the whole organization. We can all agree that financial transformation as a process, as a component of overall digital transformation, is a core priority for many organizations, and it can play a significant role in supporting the broader company goals. Everyone aims at better visibility, fewer manual steps, and more reliable data. But the challenge that we see is that many organizations still run disconnected systems. And therefore, today we're going to walk through what is driving the overall shift in the market, what the data shows, and how some companies are already practically addressing this. Moving on to have a quick look at what we have on the agenda for today. First, we're starting with the current digital landscape. I will try to cover some of the key trends that we see across procurement and finance, along with some data points that will highlight the topic and bring the message across. Then we're going to look at how procurement and finance can actually run as a single process. This is where we're going to analyze what happens when these two functions of the organizations are in sync and what is the overall impact. And then we're actually going to move from the more theoretical part to practice, where we will share the approach that we take as an organization and what is already available overall on the market. At the end of the presentation, we're going to share a customer example to show you how this type of unification of the two departments can work out in a real setup. And at the end, we are wrapping up with the Q&A section. However, if you have some questions or comments throughout the session, you can use either the chat functionality or the Q&A section, put those there, and we're going to address them at the end of the session. Before diving into the core topic of today, a very quick intro of Rojo as a company. So we are an exclusive partner of both SAP and SnapLogic for the integration with third-party applications. What you see on the right side of the slide is part of our portfolio of SAP adapters. And the key thing to highlight here is that we're not just a software vendor. These are components that are embedded into the platforms of our partners. So essentially, they are consumed by thousands of companies worldwide. We're also a key strategic partner of Coupa, and we partner with other companies in the procurement domain, and we also have more adapters and snapbacks being released as in the future as part of our ongoing roadmap. A bit on the context of today's webinar. Of course, we do have experience in procurement and financial transformation projects, but our expertise lies in the integration of these two processes, of different systems and platforms, and we're going to discuss in more detail later on what exactly is that we do in this domain. Now moving on to look at how does a typical digital landscape look nowadays, what is actually the environment that organizations operate in currently. And this is important because before we talk about the connectivity or the process alignment, it is good to paint a picture of the bigger picture that procurement, finance, but also IT teams are currently working on. And we have some data here on the slide. You can see that majority of the companies nowadays run more applications than ever. It is common to see over 1,000 tools across a single enterprise. And of course, this creates a lot of data, a lot of touch points between different teams that and even more that they can actually manage manually realistically. However, at the same time, all those systems are becoming more distributed. Majority of the organizations work in a hybrid or multi-cloud environment, which means that data is constantly moving between on-premise systems, between SaaS applications, and between different cloud platforms. The volume and frequency of the transactions keeps increasing. Many processes require real-time information instead of static reports or batch updates. But most of all, the expectations have changed. What we see across is that both the internal teams, but also the external end users expect everything to happen faster, everything to happen in real time. And all these shifts put more and more pressure on how these separate systems work together. And you can imagine that if all these systems do not communicate well with one another, or any information is delayed or inconsistent, this slows the entire organization down. So procurement slows down, finance slows down, and operations slow down as well. And this is one of the main reasons why we're putting more attention on how to connect these systems in a reliable way. And ultimately, if you and your organization want to be successful in the future, or even future-proof your landscape and your process, so to say, you need to have the right strategy in place in order to actually support this complex landscape that we all operate in nowadays. Moving on to zoom in a bit more detail as to what does this environment mean for procurement and finance teams specifically. We can already identify a couple of key drivers. What we see overall across customers and across the market is that there is usually a growing gap between what the expectation is and what the current processes and systems can support. And of course, the leadership usually wants faster answers, they want accurate numbers, they want fewer manual corrections, fewer manual interactions at all, and ultimately they want more financial predictability. However, we often see that teams work with data that moves at different speeds, so to say. So procurement, for example, knows what has been ordered, but on the other side, finance knows what has been invoiced. And it is quite a challenge to line up all these activities in real time. And this is where we identify delays and inconsistencies starting to appear. On the other hand, you also have automation continuing to gain priority because you no longer have the capacity to manage these growing volumes manually. Essentially, the more data that you have, the more important it becomes to reduce any rework. And of course, a major challenge remains fragmented systems. So imagine that even if you have very strong platforms, strong tools in place, the value can get lost in the handover, in the communication between these different tools. And that's the main reason why some teams may end up spending more time fixing the data instead of actually using it. So to summarize, the overall landscape for procurement and finance can be defined by two major forces. First is the higher expectations, and second is that the processes might not be fully aligned across procurement and finance. And therefore, if as an organization you try to strategize on a connected end-to-end way of working, you can actually realize certain benefits. And taking this as a strategic priority improves the processes, but moreover helps you essentially realize tangible benefits that we're going to review in more detail later on. So what about the data? For now, we discussed what are the trends that we see in the market, what are some of the metrics around digital landscape, what this translates to for procurement and for finance. And here on this slide, we're sharing a couple of metrics coming in from some research that has been done, some recent studies that have been published. But overall, we can identify that the growing gap between expectations and what current process can support brings a lot of difficulty across teams to align their activities. The impact of fragmented systems, we can see that this slide shows what that reality translates into when we look at the numbers. And even though we see that many finance leaders are actually prioritizing these items, and it's understandable that a lot of the financial leaders have on their agenda financial transformation, it is important to highlight that the outdated, disconnected systems and overall organizational silos are one of the biggest barriers to progress, as per the research that we are citing here. And we would say that this gives a very clear message, right? That if the challenges are clearly identified, then the goal becomes to actually address them in a structured way. And the figures point toward three concrete steps that organizations can take. First one is to reduce the manual steps, free teams from repetitive work. Second, centralize the data, so both procurement and finance work from the same information. And third, turn this data into actionable business decisions. And this helps us set the stage for why a connected end-to-end process is really becoming a strategic priority rather than some technical improvement, and how it can be a driver of the overall financial transformation. So having discussed all these aspects, looking at the metrics, at the data, at the trends, and so on, putting all this together, we can say that the landscape is changing faster than the processes around it supported, that we have new systems, new data flows, new expectations, and everything keeps moving, but still one constant remains. And this constant is that even if all these different separate parts are changing, they all need to stay connected to one another. And we as a company focus quite a lot on the connectivity, on the integration between different systems, and this is also where we see procurement and finance can help each other, can accelerate each other if they're unified in a single process. So from here on, we're going to look at what happens once you treat this process as a connected flow instead of two separate systems. And looking at procurement and finance integration, we usually speak about a spend management system or a procurement platform and the overall backend, the ERP. Here on the left side, you can see what is the situation without integration. And on the right side, you can see what happens actually if you have this integration in place, when you have started filling in this gap that slows you down. You can see that if you have such an integration between your two processes, two departments, you allow procurement and finance to operate as a complete process instead of a chain of disconnected steps. And this is where we start to see the real value appearing. Think about your suppliers, your POs, invoices, all the payment data flowing automatically between your systems in real time. This would lead to fewer errors, to speeding up the approvals, and ultimately lowering down all those operational costs which are associated with running your financial processes. If you have both your procurement and finance departments working from the same data set, which is also an accurate data set, would make your reporting, your audits much easier. You would also be able to free up time of your core teams to focus on the specific business objectives instead of manually chasing data between different systems. And in the next slides, the example we're going to review is related to integrating Coupa as a platform and SAP S for HANA as an ERP backend system. So let's proceed to see how this works actually in practice. As I said, the example we're reviewing is on Coupa and S4HANA, but it is also important to share that these principles that we're going to speak about, they apply very broadly. So we're also going to cover additional high-level examples as we proceed in the next slides. Taking a look at how such an integration can be realized from a technical perspective and from a practical direction. Essentially, what is already available on the market is some pre-built software components. These components run on SAP Integration Suite. SAP Integration Suite is a middleware platform available from SAP. It is part of the full business technology platform of SAP, and it is also part of their strategy of providing a lot of connectivity options between SAP systems and third-party apps, but also non-SAP systems to non-SAP systems, but going through the SAP middleware. Without going into too much technical detail, important here is to highlight that these two components, the Coupa adapter and the Coupa integration content, come together in order to enable end-to-end integration between these two platforms, pretty much out of the box. The adapter from one side is the component which establishes the connectivity, so you can think of it as some kind of a road, as a highway, while the integration content is essentially the cars, the trucks moving along this road. The integration content is a set of pre-built integration flows. So for example, it's a pre-built integration flow which takes in all the mapping logic, all the different steps that need to happen in the SAP integration suite in order for you to replicate, for example, a supplier or a purchase order between your two systems. The integration content is available directly from Rojo, and it is certified by Coupa, while the SAP adapter, it is pretty much an SAP solution, but it is developed by Rojo in the background. And again, an important point to make here is that together the adapter and the content enable you to create this complete integration layer between the systems. It follows the best practices which have been set up by SAP, but also from the platform side, and allows you certain customizations in order to match this setup towards your specific business processes. And also in the coming slides, we're going to review what the main benefit is of using these pre-built components instead of building something from scratch. Because indeed, if you use pre-built components, you can essentially start from a very comprehensive template, so you are further ahead already in your overall journey. And when we speak about the different software components, it is also useful to see how these are implemented in a particular project, right? So what we see here on the slide, it is the full enablement package that is available from Rojo. Essentially, it involves the delivery of the software, the adapter and the integration content, and also the enablement that makes this integration work for your specific use case. What we see typically is that a standard project takes about 5 to 7 weeks, which is quite different than a regular integration project because, as we discussed, you're not starting from scratch. All starts with the software delivery, then is the enablement, then you move on to testing and go live and hypercare support. Pretty standard process. However, again, important to highlight that here there is ready software available and also services available from Rojo, but of course also from other companies that operate in this domain that enables you to very quickly very efficiently integrate the two systems and start realizing those tangible benefits that we discussed in the earlier slides, like the real-time integration between your finance and procurement information, better visibility, and ultimately lowering some of your operational costs down. The goal of this software package, of this software and services package, is actually quite simple and straightforward. It is to provide complete, reliable integration, which is delivered quickly with minimal customer effort. And taking a look at the broader use cases that I mentioned earlier, I would like to highlight what is the overall role that we play within S2P, P2P context. We discussed earlier at the very beginning that we as a company are a partner of SAP, of SnapLogic, but we also partner with Coupa, with Zycus on the procurement side. And here you can see, for example, some of the middleware technologies, the procurement platforms, and the ERPs that we work with. And you see in yellow highlighted at the bottom of the slide on the ERP side, it says any, because for us, the key is actually the middleware which is in place. As long as it's a middleware that we have expertise in, we are able to essentially integrate a procurement and a procurement platform, spend management platform with any ERP. Some of the technical benefits that we bring in this context is, of course, the experience that we have, the expertise, but it is also this unique position that we have within the SAP and SnapLogic ecosystem, and more importantly, it is the possibility to get something pre-built, because you have different ways to integrate different systems, but there are some important considerations like the knowledge gap, the skills, how much time do you have, what are the resources that are available for such an integration, who is supporting this integration after the go live. There are a lot of different considerations that you need to take upfront, and realize that these considerations would ultimately result in the success of the project. And therefore, if you work with pre-built components, as this is the recommendation put out also directly by SAP and by some other global technology leaders, you can actually realize a host of benefits in comparison to building something from scratch. And taking a look also at how this looks like in typical customer implementation. I will briefly share with you one customer story. The full story is also available on the internet, so you can also read it. Read it in your own time if you want to see all the details. But the important KPIs that we would like to highlight here is that the overall integration between Coupa and S4HANA took in total 4 weeks to full implementation. 80% of the functionality was already delivered out of the box, so only 20% of the effort went into customizations. 80% was already delivered via the pre-built software components. And the third is, of course, the 100% real-time visibility, right? Because what we're trying to achieve with such an integration is unifying the processes, realizing these benefits from having the two platforms running in sync, and allowing you to have better visibility over your spend, and ultimately this resulting in improved financial processes. You can also see that some of the challenges that I mentioned already previously were part of this project as well, which was, did they have the necessary knowledge in-house? Did they have the necessary skills? What is a potential strategy to reduce the overall timeline of the project, the overall effort, and how you can actually realize better return of your investment in either of these two platforms, or in particular in the integration projects. And indeed, we are very happy with the results that were delivered, and we're able to do this in a very limited amount of time and realize all those benefits very quickly for our customer. Moving on to a brief summary of what you can expect in terms of indicators of success in such an integration. Those are some of the metrics that, no matter the approach that you choose, be it to do something by yourself, to do it with a partner, or to do it via a party like Rojo with pre-built components, these are some of the important metrics to keep an eye out on. So how long does it take? What is the what is the return on investment that you can realize? How much could it come pre-built out of the box? And what is the level of compliance with the underlying technology? And we are happy to say that these are some of the indicators of success that we've identified over numerous projects. It is not project specific, but overall we see that there is a huge reduction in the time that it takes to execute such an integration, that you can realize up to 60% lower total cost of ownership for the whole integration project. And you actually get a lot of the components already pre-built while they are being 100% SAP compliant. Now, let's take a look at what further resources can we provide towards the audience here. Of course, this is just a 30-minute session where we have cited some interesting studies, interesting new research that is out there by some of our partners. In case you want some further details, you can always reach out to us. We'll be happy to provide you with additional input there. Also, we do have ROI assessment tool on our website. There you can select a certain number of business processes that you would like to run between two different software applications and SAP S/4HANA, and you can actually calculate for yourself what would be the return on investment that you can realize by going for a pre-built integration. We can also share further best practices, insights from past projects. In case you are interested to learn more about this, you can always reach us either at hello@rojoconsultancy.com or scan one of the QRs for faster access. And also we do have a webinar library on our website. There you can find different sessions on demand. Focus of this session was more on the business benefits around procurement and finance being in sync, but we also have multiple sessions which are around overall modernization of IT landscape, moving from older on-premises systems, on-premises legacy systems to new cloud systems, about realizing about improving your monitoring capabilities, realizing observability across your IT landscape, and a variety of other topics that could be useful for some of the people here on the call. And again, to summarize some of the key takeaways from today's session, first, of course, is the pressure on overall innovation, on teams for overall innovation, and the role that financial transformation plays in this domain. We can confidently say that real progress starts when both procurement and finance as processes work from the same data and are in sync. Second, we identified that the biggest challenges are the manual steps, the fragmented systems, and the inconsistent data, which overall slows the complete source to pay or procure to pay process. So those are the challenges that you need to be mindful of and to spot across your landscape in order to move towards a strategy on how to solve them. Third, we reviewed what is already available on the market. There are some other tools, of course, that we cannot cover in 30 minutes. But as I said, if you have further interest or questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to share further input there. Working with a pre-built solution can enable you to speed up the delivery of the integration and yeah, essentially reduce the overall risk of the project. And last but not least, general conclusion, organizations that consider finance and procurement, aligning finance and procurement as a single process as part of their overall strategy, are better positioned for future success, and they can realize better control over their spend, better visibility, and ultimately better financial predictability. This covers the main part of today's session. Feel free to put any comments or any questions in the Q&A section. I will just take a look now and see some questions. Okay, I see in the Q&A section we have a question which says, for successfully running this in the organization, do we need to run PRPO via SAP or can also other platforms be used? This is a very good question. There are multiple ways of doing this. I would say that doing this via SAP, if you are, of course, already an SAP backend customer, meaning that you run SAP ECC or S/4HANA, a lot of these organizations will already have SAP BTP or SAP Integration Suite as part of their landscape. So it would make more sense for them to run it via the SAP middleware instead of putting further investment into other systems. However, it all depends on your overall strategy, right? If you have another middleware, not SAP, it could be a middleware that we didn't even mention, it would of course be possible to run to run this integration between procurement and finance platforms. However, you would need to make a check whether something pre-built is already available, so we can realize the benefits of not building this from scratch. Any other questions from the audience, or any feedback for the session? Maybe something that you would like to see coming up as a topic in further sessions that we do? Feel free to share it now. If not, we can proceed to close the session. And yeah, I would like to thank everyone for the participation, and wish you successful end of the year, and a good holiday season coming up. Thank you all for joining.